I'm going to be videoing a quick little install of installing the engine back on the Z930M John Deere zero-turn mower. So this did have the FX810V. I actually threw something through the block. Probably hard to see, but maybe you could see right at the fingertip there. Big hole in the block, all the oil dumped out. Engine was actually still running, was able to get it back into the shed. This little wintertime project just went ahead and pulled off that engine. I'll include some video of me pulling that while I'm installing that, but if you want to see how to uninstall it, I guess you could just watch the video in reverse of installing the FX850V. Not hard at all. I mean, here's parts. Some of these didn't even maybe need to come off, like this back bracket that goes along the bottom, but it did make pulling things off easier. Clutches there on the ground. But yeah, not many parts. Mufflers there. And like I said, this is the FX810V. This is the one that comes stock on the Z930M. And here is the brand new Kawasaki FX850V. So still in the crate. This one has a little bit more horsepower. I think the FX810 is around 25 horsepower and this is around 27 horsepower. Either way, this is 2 horsepower more, and it fits identical to the 810 here. So it's just a little bit bigger air intake. That gives you that 2 more horsepower here. Everything's the same. The shaft's all the same. You get everything on this motor that is on that motor, except for the muffler. So the only thing I need to keep and install is the muffler off of the old 810. Got this motor from Merit Hardware. They are definitely the cheapest ones out there from what I saw. So definitely appreciate them getting it shipped out right away. Going to be able to get this installed right here quick. Just need to go ahead, get this motor out of the box, out of the crate. I'll set it there, and then we'll get to reinstalling it. Everything, like I said, was really easy to uninstall. Probably took an hour to pull this engine. You can see all the wiring harnesses and everything is just all plug and play. So should go right back in quick. And while I was at it, I did go ahead and change out the hydraulic fluid, the transmission fluid, just with this plug here and this plug here. And that all looked really good. So really think that this will keep this mower running a lot longer. Definitely going to probably add some Loctites to some of these bolts. There was only one bolt holding this motor on. These 3 were completely loose. This one was the only one that was tight. I could undo quite a few bolts on this mower, on this motor, the 810, just by hand. So definitely will be putting some Loctite on some of these things. All right, let's go ahead now. Get this out of the crate, get it set up here, and we'll get back to reinstalling it. And like I said, I'll probably post some videos here and there of me uninstalling this one while I'm reinstalling that one, so you guys can see the uninstall as well as the reinstall at the same exact time. And if you want to go ahead and uninstall this motor, I would say probably just watch this video in reverse of installing the 850. But wasn't planning on making this a video, but I went out there on YouTube and I didn't see anyone else out there that had a motor uninstall or reinstall for the Z930M. So just putting this out there, hopefully it will be helpful to someone. Let's go ahead, let's get started. All right, I got the FX850 all unboxed, and you can see what comes on here. Even got the oil filter, even pulled the dipstick out. Even oil on here. It's like it's shipped with oil inside of it. This little intake cover, this one that's right here, came with it too. That was zip tied over on the side. Yeah, nice clean engine. It's like everything's gonna hook back up real easy on this. So far I just cut the box open. Figured that was probably the easiest thing to do, to get this out and just transfer it right up onto here. Oh, we even got the filter for gas filter, so starter. All right, let's go ahead. Let's lift this up and set it on the back of the mower. All right, got the engine dropped in now. So it's just sitting there, nothing's bolted on. Just put that on there just so that it looks complete. And yeah, next step is probably to transfer over the wire harness. I want to do that before I actually bolt down the motor. Looks like that's the only other thing that you need from here besides the muffler and these guards and your pulleys and clutch is this wire harness right here. So you'll see that these two wires have a little bullet connector here and here on your black and your green, and those are over there on the new motor. So I kind of went through and labeled everything. This goes here. This purple wire goes over here to the starter. Normally this starter is here. I just took it off so that I could see the hole in the case a little bit better back there. And then this wire goes over to the oil pressure switch over on the other side of the engine. Not sure if I can see that. Yep. So right here you can see that connector. I actually bought a new one of those pressure switches just because. So that will actually get installed right here, I believe. You can see they have a plug in here. So that plug should unthread out of there. Should be able to thread in the new pressure switch and get everything plugged in. Like I said, oil's already in it. I don't think there's much. I mean, it's just right on the bottom of the dipstick. So definitely we'll need more oil. And like I said, the other wires that are already attached to this engine, they're these ones right here. So this is the green and the black. And they do have just little bullet connectors on them. So when I get that wiring harness transferred off the old engine onto this new one, I'll go ahead and shrink wrap those. I don't think this is shrink wrap on here. I think it's just a plastic protector. But I'm going to shrink wrap those. And then the next step will probably be to bolt down the engine. But yeah, let's go ahead. I'll get this wire harness off of the old engine, get it onto the new one, and then we'll proceed to the next step. If you're wondering why I have this tire off, you don't need it off, but I did pull it off just to get easier access to these bolts, to loosen them a little bit more, to get this guard off of here. You can see those just slip on, those back two bolts though. So you don't need to take them completely out to get that out of there. But yeah, that's the only reason that tire's off. You don't need to take it off to install or uninstall this engine. Wiring harness is transferred over, got everything all plugged back in where it should go into the starter on all these areas. And I also cleaned up both of these plugs. There was a little bit of corrosion in there, those two to go together. I'll finish connecting and wiring everything up at the end. I did end up breaking one of the bullet connectors when I pulled it apart. So the green one came out fine, but you see the black one ended up snapping off. So I'll go ahead, I'll put a new end on there, and then those will connect right into these bullet connectors that are coming off of the motor. And then I will shrink wrap those. Let's go ahead though. I'll probably install the bolts though, now that hold the motor on. And like I said, there is only one bolt holding this motor in place. So I'm going to put some blue Loctite on the bolts when I go ahead and install those. You can see those are all right there. So I'm going to use the ones that came out of this motor. There were a couple bolts that were holding this engine in the box, I believe, but you can see the bottom of this has been completely tore wide open. So I don't think those bolts that fell out were engine motor mount bolts either. So let's go ahead, I'll install those 4 bolts. Pretty simple process, just a matter of lining up the motor with the holes. I cleaned this up a little bit down here. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that is where those 4 bolts will mount into. And yep, shaft is coming down from the bottom of the motor up there. There'll be a couple of other things that I probably take off of the old motor, just like this oil drain. The other one has the spout that comes out and goes down through here, makes it draining a little bit easier. But those will be probably near the end of the video, if not maybe I'll do that when I go ahead and change the oil on this, after I go ahead and run it for a certain time period. You can see this oil pressure switch wire coming over here that will attach right there though, and this wire comes down into here and attaches to the clutch. Once we get that on there, left all the belts here. It's the upper belt, here's the lower belt down here on the ground, so hopefully I can just roll those right back on once I get those installed. Shouldn't take too long. This only took me an hour to disassemble, so I assume it'll probably take me an hour to reinstall. Not sure if I said it yet, but there's I think 2,300 hours on this engine last time I checked. We'll check that when I go ahead and fire this back up. The hours are not stored in a computer or anything on the engine. They are stored in that display, so I'm not going to switch that out. I'm just going to make note in my owner's manual when I switch that out. In this video, I guess, will be proof as well of when this new motor was installed, what those hours read. And those hours are what is on this motor. I think it was 2,300 hours, and these are supposed to last between 2,000 and 3,000 hours if they are maintained properly. So we are right there. All right, I'm gonna go ahead, put those 4 bolts in, put some blue Loctite on them, get them tightened down, and then we'll move on to the next step. I have the motor all bolted back down again, so you can see the 4 bolts. These ones just have a bolt and a washer. This is the one that actually has this part that keeps the belt on the pulley. So I might have to loosen this one back up again to get this pulley, or this belt, onto this pulley, but that's fine. And then the last one way over here is just a bolt and a washer again. Next step, I believe I'm going to go to installing the pulleys back on here, as well as the clutch. And probably gonna wait to hook up some of this other stuff like fuel. This filter actually came on here though, so pretty surprised by all of the stuff that comes stock on this engine. And yeah, that'll just connect up where these lines are, go back down there. But for now, like I said, let's go ahead and I will try to get some of these pulleys and the clutch and the bottom pulley all back on. Those are pretty simple. You can see it just has a keyway. So that is actually, looks like it's bolted on inside of there. I don't think that key even detaches. So that should slip right up in there exactly how I show it. So the elongated part goes up, and where the key is seated in the bottom is the part that goes down. Oh, it actually says this side facing clutch. So just like that, that'll slide up. Then next, clutch will go on. That also has a key in there. And last, we'll put the bottom pulley on, and then we will put the last bolt in to attach that whole assembly. So you can kind of see how this all looks. And here's that bolt that'll go through into the shaft there that's coming out of the bottom of the motor. And this is kind of how this whole clutch sits there too. Not sure if I actually told the story of this engine, how it ended up blowing. I was out and I actually was using it in a little bit colder weather. Heard a little clang, a lot of white smoke came out the muffler, and then almost like metal was getting picked up in the engine. So I hurried it up and I drove it back to the shed and parked it till I was able to look it over, and I could see oil, you know, kind of pooling down around the bottom of the engine. But it was this engine, the one that has blown. So I parked it for the year, and now it's springtime, so decided this was a good springtime project, get it back up here, get the new motor installed. And then I was able to see, once I took the starter off here, that big hole in the side of the case. Looked up that part, that's $1,000. New engine was $2,000. So pretty much a no-brainer, the amount of damage that might be done inside of this engine, that I might as well go ahead and just get the new one, get the upgraded with the 2 horsepower more, and I'll probably part out the good usable parts onto eBay and maybe get $1,000 out of this. So might be ended up getting a new engine for $1,000. That's a pretty good deal. I'm going to film the clutch assembly in a little more detail now. I did put some just normal Loctite anti-seize before I put this pulley on. That went on there fine, slipped in the keyway. And then I was able to roll the belt back on there, so just pretty much grabbed it on one side and kept spinning this, pretty much turning the motor over while I was holding the belt on and got it rolled on there. And then again, here's this bar that's going into the motor, and it just pretty much holds that belt on there. But filming the clutch here in a little more detail, so I should just have it sitting on there like that. That's not necessarily how it goes though. You see there's a little shoe here, this part almost looks like a brake pad. That has to go on this side of the metal plate. You can maybe actually see it does look like a rotor. So think of this as like the rotor, and when that goes on there like that, this metal piece should be on this side of it to put some tension on there. So you got to disassemble this a little bit, but you can see there's a little spacer in here and then a bolt here, and then over here on this side the same thing. There's the spacer in here and another bolt there. So you just got to take those off and put those back on after. It's a little hard to get these bolts back in from the top after, but they do go in, and as well as this pin here goes in a very specific way. There's grooves cut into this metal piece, so it only does go in there one way. But now that I've explained that, I can go ahead. I'm going to take these two bolts out and start sliding everything back up on the keyway. Again, you can see keyways on all these parts. I'm going to go ahead and put some anti-seize back on that shaft again, slide everything up, and hopefully get this all reassembled. Okay, I'm adding a little more detail here, so I did take that pad off. This is exactly how it goes. So this is the bottom. You can see these spacers in there, and then there's this little metal piece that also slides out. That little nub faces outwards, detent. This is the bolt that goes up through all the pulleys in the clutch. So you can see that'll go right in there. I'm going to put some Loctite on that though, some blue Loctite on that before I reinstall that. And the shipping box that the motor came in worked perfect as a spacer to hold all of these up and together as I go ahead and put that bolt in. Otherwise these will slide off. That belt is holding these ones taut up here in the top, but the clutch and this bottom pulley will slide right off. Another thing to point out, you can see I shove cable for the clutch back up through there, but also trying to stay out of the light, this bolt goes up in this hole right there. You can see with that plastic little rubber piece, that grommet goes up through the deck that keeps the clutch from spinning. Everything's done down here now, so got this all back together. That plate back on there, that's a very tedious part to put back on. It's a 10mm wrench for those two bolts that hold that on. Got to do some zip tying. Got to zip tie this wire back up here and this clutch wire there, but everything's all bolted back on. Let's see, I got the bolt down there in the bottom. Put some Loctite on there like I said. Hit it with the impact and torqued it down a little bit. The engine does want to roll over though when you are doing that, and how I got the bolt out when I was disassembling it was take the guard off, and down in there you can see the bolt, which is this bolt right on here. I just put a breaker bar, so put the breaker bar on there with a socket up here on the top to hold that from the engine turning over, and then I was able to break that bottom bolt loose, and that came right out of there pretty easily. Going to go ahead now and probably put some of these guards back on, some of this back bracing. Then I'll probably put the muffler back on next. I did order some new gaskets just to go on here, so I'm not going to assemble that today. I'm going to wait for those to come back in. But yeah, I actually did think I had an exhaust leak because every time I parked the mower, it burnt the grass. And I looked, and I don't see any holes in the bottom of this muffler at all. Bolts were very loose though, even these ones holding the muffler on. So I'm thinking that these maybe just vibrated loose and there was exhaust escaping around these, going straight down onto the grass and not going out the side of the muffler. All right, we're gonna go ahead, like I said, just put this metal piece back on here. And then probably hold it there for a little while, maybe do some miscellaneous stuff like attach the gas line back to here, maybe do some of this wiring. I could probably attach that today too. Just in case anyone is curious, they do ship with the filter already installed, both the inner and the outer filter. You can see it's a Donaldson PB21575. So looks like this was made July 5th, 2024. So that is already installed in there. Went ahead, took the tape off of here. I'm gonna go ahead and put this on there, of course. That'll go there. Just gets held on with hose clamp. I did go ahead and connect the rest of the electrical over here. So this just plugs in here. Hot wire, and this one coming from the front attaches right here to the bottom of the starter. I'm not going to connect these last two wires to the engine, these two, because that one is broken off. Like I said, I got to fix that. Pretty easy though. Match up black with black, green with green, and up here these two wires go on ground. So right here, there's this bigger ground wire and then skinnier ground wire. So looks like this bigger ground wire is going from the battery. And I didn't show this on camera, but as always make sure that you're disconnecting the battery before you do any work. Yeah, it's getting close now. Closer, I guess. I'm gonna go ahead and connect these two lines. I did install the back frame here. Not sure if that's gonna maybe make my life a little bit harder when I go ahead and put this oil pressure sensor in. When I do get that, maybe connect the throttle and choke cables up, and that'll probably bring me to a stopping point. We're getting close now. So choke cable connected, throttle cable all connected. Those all went right back to where they were located. And this connected right back up here. They actually did have one of these extra springs on there because they had it covered just with this little rubber piece there so that nothing got into it. So I used the ones that were originally on this mower though. So got that line all connected back up. I just connected the fuel line. So this is the fuel line that was on here. Different fuel filter. And I used the hose on the new one they gave me. You can see this hose did have this wrap around it. So I did take that off and transfer that over here just so that it gives this hose a little bit more abrasion resistance. And let's see what filter they got on here. So it looks like it's 49019-0031. That looks like it says C394. So not sure you can make that out, but that is the fuel filter on here. And attach that up there. Plugged the clutch back in, and we are looking good. Put this belt back on. So just rolled that belt back onto that pulley. All right, let's stop there. We'll wait for this oil pressure switch to come in. We'll put that back in there. And then we'll attach the muffler when I get the 2 new gaskets here. Then we should be ready to fire this up. I'm not going to put the back end on until I go ahead, fire it up, make sure everything works here. Yeah, getting close. Definitely a nice looking engine. Should give me some extra power for this 60-inch mulch on demand deck as well for the Z930M. Hopefully going to be wrapping up this today. So I did go ahead, attach the muffler back on here. The new gaskets came in. Super simple, you know, there's just 2 bolts here, 2 bolts here, and then these attachments with the 2 bolts there. Here's the old gaskets, and they don't look too bad. Probably could have reused them, but I know there was some exhaust leaking around them. All that it holds these on is these nuts with a lock washer. These lock washers look like they were done for. So I did replace those. And some of those nuts and bolts that were rattling around in the bottom of the box, they were actually the same size, so maybe that's where they were located. They could have been on these mufflers pins. But yeah, that's on. I did attach the guard down here. I think that's only so that you're not burning your grass. It's kind of deflecting a little bit of that heat. And did run into a little bit of an issue with this plug over here. So you can see this hole. That I went ahead and tried to take out with an Allen wrench. It was like a 5mm, and it stripped. This one, the upper one, was fine, didn't strip at all. So I did have to go ahead, got the extractors out, and I did just insert this in there, and it did come out. Looks like they do have some, I think that's just gasket, instead of using Loctite, this just has that thread sealant already on it, and that's what that red is. I heated it up a little bit before trying to extract it because that's kind of the last ditch effort. Other than that, I would have had to drill that out, and it probably is just an aluminum plug. We don't need to reuse this because the new pressure sensor came in. So I'm gonna go ahead, we're gonna install that right in that hole now. We'll plug this wire right here on there. We will add a little bit more oil to this because you can see there's no oil coming out of here. I'll have to check it. I think they just put bare minimum oil in here, maybe just for testing before it leaves the factory. And then we should be ready to fire it up and give it a test. Wondering what the part number for the sensor is. This is it, MIU144442. So that's John Deere, and the seals for the muffler. I used to have those laying around. Oh yeah, here they are. So those are M136651. So that is the muffler gaskets. But yeah, I'd say probably going to take about an hour to reinstall this. Took about an hour to rove. So you're probably looking at 2 hours to rip the old engine off and reinstall the new one. That's pretty simple. That's definitely a quick turnaround time to do an engine swap. And after that, we'll just hook the battery terminals back up. Like I said, we'll see if she turns on and runs. I'd say this video is a wrap. Fired right up. Rolled over for just a couple seconds, you know, to get fuel in the line. Runs great. You can see the hours on it were 2329.3. So this engine over here ran 2,300 hours. This was used in commercial use before I got it. Not sure how well the maintenance was ever kept up on this engine. This engine I will always keep in tip-top shape, though. I always do my oil change every year and don't mow a whole lot. Usually once every other week. Got about a 2-acre of lawn to cut here. And the last little bit would just be throwing on this back cover. You can see, though, that just bolts on. See these 4 bolts on either side. Just go ahead and attach right up into these holes. So super simple. That'll all be back together. I don't know what else to say. It's ready for spring cutting. I have to go ahead. I'll push this back, take the blades off, get them sharpened, balanced yet. And I'm gonna call and make sure, see what the break-in period is on this engine. Maybe I'll pop that up on the screen, how many hours before I change the oil. I am just using the regular, you know, John Deere oil in this right now. I'm gonna call where I bought it and ask them what engine oil they recommend for this. Looking at the forums, looks like most people recommend 10W40. I'm probably gonna switch to something a little bit thicker. I always noticed in the summertime that this light kicking on, and it was due to like low oil pressure. Oil was too thin when it got super warm. I think 10W40 will be pretty good for up here in Michigan where I'm at. Shouldn't be running it in any temperatures outside of that range. Things to keep in mind, I guess, if you go and replace this, you might want to replace some of the components, like the gaskets between the muffler. You do need to supply your own muffler, but that's the only thing that I really saw other than the wire harness. You got to pull the old wire harness off of here as well. So wire harness and muffler. I also replaced the oil pressure sensor just because I wanted a new one. I think the one I bought for this one was aftermarket, so I do wanted the official John Deere one on here just to make sure I'm getting nice, good, accurate oil pressures on this brand new engine. And you can definitely upgrade it. You can go from the 810 to the 850, no problem. Sits on here stock just like a glove. Spin around to this side. Yeah, looks good. Definitely need to do some washing. Maybe get the power wash out. It's going to be 70 degrees today, so we are approaching springtime soon. You can see the grass out here, though, is not quite growing yet. Still a little brown, so it's still dormant. I did call the hardware real quick and actually got the answer. So they said run this for a full day before you change the oil break-in period. So 5 to 8 hours. Change the oil on it and just use it lightly that day. You don't want to be like towing. You don't want to be rolling a yard or towing something heavy. And I did ask them real quick what oil to use, and they recommended 10W40. Doesn't matter if it's synthetic or not. So that is the recommendations on this. I'm going to go ahead, run this for 5 to 8 hours. We'll change the oil out. We'll use the John Deere for this first break-in period, this 5 to 8 hours. Then after that, we'll be using 10W40 after that. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you go down below, hit that like button. Really helps out, helps the channel, helps the video a lot. And if you want to see more videos like this, you know, just around the yard, around the house, working on projects, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I do have a lot more videos that I will be posting very shortly. Appreciate everyone watching. Leave any comments or questions you have in down below, and I'll make sure I keep checking those and try to answer those if I'm able to, if they're simple questions or if I know the answer. All right, we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching, and make sure you hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. Also, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next videos I will be posting, and leave your questions, comments, and suggestions below.